live, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this special, right? Already tongue tied. Welcome to this Thanksgiving special, Saturday morning live in the afternoon this time, folks. We are live and we are here at the Farmers Market on Veterans Road doing our show. We had a great parade today, and so that's the reason we bumped it back to 4 o'clock. But it was a fantastic parade, a huge parade. It was over an hour and a half long. Um, kind of like giving Macy's uh, a run for their money. The Macy's Day Parade. So we want to welcome everyone to the show and thank you to the greatest family of viewers and listeners of all time. I say that and I mean that from my heart. Without you, we'd have no show. Uh, and ultimately, that would mean a lot of veterans and families would not be reached by us. And, we're not the only folks out there, but we do what we can. And without you, we couldn't even do that. So thank you. Thank you. Before we really get into our show, I want to thank our sponsors. We want to thank Pat Garrett and the Pat Garrett Amphitheater out there at 78 and 183 in Strausstown, and Stone Ridge Retirement Community in Myerstown. They do a wonderful job over there with the folks who are living in the community, and they hold a lot of events. Very proactive place, and they take a really good interest and care in not just the folks in the community, but especially our veterans. I can't say enough positive about the way our veterans are respected and cared for in that place. And we also have Farrow's Car Club of Lebanon County. As I say every week, it's a national club, started out in LA, and we have a couple of chapters in the Lebanon County. We have the Farrow's Car Club, and they're a great group of guys and gals, car enthusiasts who do a lot in the community, and we've partnered with them to really raise awareness on not just the need to do something regarding veteran suicide, but actually what to do. So again, thank you to all the guys and ladies in Farrow's Car Club, and also Arby's of Pine Grove. Arby's is one of our partners and a huge, huge partner in helping host events. And we're setting up a Veterans Cafe in Arby's to have a nice section of the restaurant dedicated to veterans, complete with memorabilia and artifacts and things like that. So veterans, will have like, hey, let's go over to Arby's and just sit in the Veterans Cafe and have some coffee. It's a great thing to do, a great way to say thank you to our veterans. And we also want to remind you of the Kazern Community and Veterans Outreach and the Intervene Initiative, the KZCVO with the Intervene, combating veteran suicide. We want to talk about some of our family. We talk about being global, and we are, little old me. We're doing a global show, and I want to reach out. We have troops in Gaza. Whether that's a well-known fact or not, it's true. I've spoken with a few folks over there, and we definitely want to reach out and say, bravo and thank you to the folks over there in Gaza, and wish you well, Godspeed, and safety. We also have some folks over in the Philippines, and I want to make a special mention to Nana, CJ, and Baby Riz. Hi. Hi, and have a great day over there in beautiful Philippines. The weather is wonderful. I get pictures now and then, and little notes to tease me and tell me just how wonderful the weather is over there as we're breaking out our coats. Um, I want to make a very special mention of a wonderful, wonderful lady who I recently reconnected with. Um, really super. She's in the real estate world and just lighting the world on fire. And she has recently received a promotion in her company. And when we talk about a promotion, we're thinking about, okay, a step up the corporate ladder. Well, how about going from a continental U.S. post Yeah, military. She's in real estate, Sal, not the infantry. So she didn't have a stateside post, but office, and her promotion came in the form of taking over an office in London, and yes, London, England, of all places. We're not talking about New London, Connecticut. We are talking about London, England, and she reached out to me to let me know, hi, how you doing? It's been a while, and let's catch up. And quite frankly, I couldn't be happier. And I also want to mention Sandra Linda out in LA. And thank you for listening, Sandra. It's great to have your input. And one of my great friends for many years, William Clemente in Manhattan. Um, for those of you who may not know, William is actually the cousin of the late Roberto Clemente, who, if you recall, we lost Roberto in a plane crash on his way to Honduras to render aid and help the folks over there. Um, so, thank you, Roberto, for what you were doing. Um, you are appreciated, and a big shout out to William Clemente. And William is also, I don't know if he's going to be upset for me telling about this or not, but William is also part of the crew, part of the actors on, uh, what am I thinking? Blue Bloods. I'm sorry. There's like Hill Street Blues, Blues this, and Blue Bloods. So if you catch William in a couple of episodes there, and he was just telling me about a new series he's doing uh, for Paramount. So William's really busy, a wonderful friend and great human being, wonderful, humble guy. And he is also coming on board with the Intervene Initiative to help utilize some of his experience and knowledge and education to see what difference we can all make in somebody's lives. And I want to make a very, very special shout out to a veteran who turns 91 tomorrow. He lives in Valley View, Pennsylvania, Mr. Harry Lebo. Happy birthday. Happy birthday. And without further ado, I'd like to bring on our very special guest, Mr. John Seal. John, as you may recall, was on last week. We've been talking.
Can't hear you.
On, uh, I don't want to say full circle, but he's taken everything that was negative and turned it into positive to be able to help someone else. John, out in California and Baja, thank you for joining us, John, and welcome to the show. How are you, brother?
I'm doing okay. Thanks for having me on the show.
Thank you for coming on the show, John. It really is an honor to have you on. Um, you know, I'm so grateful that you're willing and able to delve into your own life story to be able to bring it out to let people know how to get unstuck. And I believe that's where we want to start. And I'm going to turn it over to you, John. We talked last week about getting unstuck and how it's a huge part. It's a huge step in being able to even begin to heal, to find help. So, John, I'm going to turn it over to you right now and tell us all about it, John, please.
Sure. Well, um, really, about 40 years ago, I started this process, not willingly, but I had a bad year. I was fired 3 times, um, and which I had never been fired before, and so I didn't know what to do. And then during that time, unfortunately, my best friend committed suicide, and I found him 2 days later, which really I ended up getting PTSD from the shock of that trauma. Then my dog died a week later. Then my fiance left me 2 weeks after that. And then later on, I got fired one more time in that year. So it was a bad year. And unfortunately, at the time, I had no skills in how dealing with it. And in fact, the basic message I got was just suck it up. That's life. And so that's, I think, a common message that a lot of people get when they're having trouble. And so it took another 10 years before I had another really bad year like that. And that's when I realized I needed to get professional help. And so I sought out counseling. And halfway through the second session with the original counselor, he said, "I think you're over my head." And I'm thinking, this is not what you want to hear as a client. But from then on, I said, okay, I'm going to find someone that really knows what they're doing about trauma. And I found some good help after that. I ended up going to a personal growth weekend, which was like getting 5 years of therapy in one weekend. It was just amazing. And from then on, I had a hunger, like, oh, there's information on what you can do about this and how you can make your life better. And so I started reading 5 self-help books a week, and I would go to workshops from the authors. And I went back and got my master's degree in psychology. I started writing my own books and doing my own workshops, and I worked with many of the A-list people in the personal development field because I could not get enough. I wanted to know how to make life better for me. And eventually I realized I had done more research on this in the past 30 years than anybody practically. And so I wanted to share that information with people to help them so it wouldn't take them 10 years to get unstuck. They could get unstuck in sometimes minutes. In fact, I was on a show and I was asked, you wrote the book on how to get unstuck. So you obviously don't get stuck anymore. I said, no, I still get stuck. I just don't stay stuck very long, because I have skills and tools now. And so that's what I wanted to do for other people, give them the knowledge that I had achieved by all my research to help them so that they wouldn't have to go for decades possibly to feel, stuck in their life. And so I put out a series of books, and I got books 8 and 9 coming out in the next month. So I continue to source material for people to help them. And so I wanted to show them that from a personal standpoint, I learned how to do this for me. And then I realized what I learned, other people could benefit from as well. So that's where the whole idea came from, to help people through the information I gained.
Incredible. I love to hear you share, John. And I don't mean to call it a story, because when I say about someone's story, it kind of just, it doesn't give it the due. That being said, I love to hear your story. And we talked about something the other week, and it was kind of like, how relevant is it to know why compared to how when it comes to becoming unstuck?
Yeah. Well, I was always searching for the why, but it's not necessary. The people don't have to know why something is the way it is. They just need the steps to take. In fact, my last book that I put out was because unfortunately I got a second dose of PTSD because I literally was minutes away from dying. And I woke up in a hospital 8 days later because I was in a coma. It was during COVID. I wasn't COVID, it was something else, but I was slowly being strangled. I was turning blue, literally. And I woke up with no memory of being in the hospital or going to the hospital, or even the week before I went to the hospital. And it was terrifying. And I made a phone call to a friend of mine, and the words came out, "Help, I've been kidnapped, call the police." Because that's all I could figure out. And I'm strapped to this hospital bed. I've got all these tubes coming out of me, and it was terrifying with no memory. And the reason for the lack of memory was I was still coming off the drugs that they put me in the coma with. So luckily, a lot of that memory did come back, but I was still traumatized. And so I wrote another book as I was going through the trauma. So I was putting words to what it's like to have PTSD, what it's like to go through that. And then as I kept going through the healing process, I kept writing about that too, on how I was taking the steps to get out of it. So the book's called Second Chances, Transforming Trauma to Triumph. And I did it for 2 reasons. I did it because I want the people who are going through the trauma to realize they're not alone. And I wanted to give the words to those people, to have the people who surround them have a better understanding of what they're going through by reading what I was going through, because it's very similar. And therefore they can have a better idea of what it's like to experience that trauma, and how they can maybe be more supportive because of it. So the idea is you don't really need to understand the why, but rather have some tools um, to help get out of that. So part of it is in that book. In fact, we talked about the suicide rate for veterans, which is at least 22 a day now. And that's one of the reasons I started a new project, which is called the Veterans and First Responders Book Drive. And my goal is to raise corporate funds and private funding to give these books that I wrote about dealing with trauma to them for free, so that we can help them by giving them some basic tools to start them on their way to healing. And so one of the books that I put out just before the Second Chances book was called Get Unstuck Now, The Simple Guide to Restart Your Life. In fact, there's a copy. And the idea is, in it, I give some explanations as to what you can do, and a little bit of understanding, but more what you can do and how you can take some steps in your life that can help move you forward. And the idea is, what a lot of people don't realize is that when you're in the trauma, your mind is not working clearly because there's a lot of static that's going on. And so my goal is to help you to reduce that static by the processes I put in that book, to help people to then, once you clear some of that static out, you can get a better signal, and therefore you can think more clearly and maybe find a new way, and hopefully get some counseling, get somebody who's professionally trained. Not all counselors are trained in trauma, so find someone who is. And then the other part, as I talked about the suicide numbers, is unfortunately I've had 12 people in my life commit suicide, and I became an unwilling participant in learning how to deal with it, because at the time, the first one was 40 years ago, I had no skills, and had my friend come to me and said, "I'm feeling suicidal," I would have said, "Wow, bummer." I didn't have any idea of what to do. And so since then, I was approached to write an article for a national publication where they asked me to write an article, 5 things you can do if your friend is feeling suicidal. So I wrote an article and I sent it, and they go, "This is really good, but we changed our mind. We want it to be 5 things to do if you're feeling suicidal." So that's different. So I wrote a new article. I sent that in. They said, "Oh, this looks great. We'll use it." And then there's a 4-month gap between when you submit to a magazine between then and when it's published. And unfortunately, during that time, my niece committed suicide. So I wrote a 3rd article about what it's like to be left behind, because by this time she was, I think, the 6th person that I had experienced that had committed suicide. So I wrote the 3 articles together, and that article is called Hope. And it's in the back of the Second Chances book, because I wanted to make sure people got that. It's also on some suicide prevention websites and such. But the idea is I wanted people to have that information, practical things. Here's the things you can actually do if you're feeling that way, or if your friend is feeling that way. And here's what to do if you're left behind, because a lot of people are traumatized by someone else's suicide, like I was.
Absolutely. We're survivors.
So it helps to know what it's like. So again, part of the reason I wrote that is because I wanted people to not feel alone, since I had experienced it numerous times, and then things that you could do to heal. And so with those books are the 2 main ones that we're going to be using for the book drive, but I wrote one for kids too, and they need this information too. My life would be completely different if I would have had this understanding and the skills back when I was a child. So we've got that, and then we've got another one called Keep On Believing, stories of inspiration, courage, and triumph. And the idea is it's like a chicken soup for the soul kind of book. It's a collection of stories of different people who went through life's challenges and then came out the other side. And even at the end of each story, I asked them to write, what was the lesson that they learned? What did they get out of it? Because different people can get different things from that story. And I wanted them to know, what is it that you got from that, going through that experience? Because I think that's one of the best things you can understand. Again, you can go, oh, they got through it, so I can get through it. I mean, that's really what the book's about. It's to
Right.
inspire people, like, look at this, maybe they're going through the same thing. One of them was, cancer, and so various different things that they encountered. And when you can then know someone else has succeeded at healing from that, then that can give you hope that you can also heal from that. And that's what it's meant for.
Let me just ask a quick question, John, regarding the articles that you wrote that are in the back of your book, Hope. Does that include all three articles?
Yes.
Okay, okay. I wanted to make sure and let folks know that. Um, and that book is called Second Chances.
Second chances, transforming trauma to triumph.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Um, some of the other books that you have out, John, and I think a lot of folks would agree that uh, you have not been picked on. You have been singled out, however, though, to experience this, to be able to do what you're doing, and do it effectively. So I would say that you have been chosen rather than picked on, um, and incredible, incredible. John, how can folks get your books other than, like, say, the military donation type thing? How would our listeners be able to reach out to you and let you know they'd like a copy of any or all of your books?
Sure. I'll send you links that you can post with your postings.
Okay.
But they can find them all on Amazon. And
Okay. Okay.
and I'll send you links directly so they can just click on it and go and get the books that they want. But because I know, yeah, you we don't want people who are desperate for them now to get that information and have to wait months until we ship it
Right.
to them.
Right.
So they can order it right now on Amazon. And I've got two more books coming out by the end of the year. They're
Okay.
done already, but we're doing the finishing touches and the covers and all that. But one's a companion workbook for the Get Unstuck Now, and we have another one that's in Spanish. We have the Get Unstuck in Spanish, so we'll have the Get Unstuck Now in Spanish.
Okay.
And then there's going to be another book coming out. So it's keeping me busy. But the idea is, again, I want people to have information that they can make their life better, just with that. And even the regular books, the Get Unstuck Now book, it's kind of like a mini workbook itself. And there's questions at the end of each chapter. But what I ask people to do is read the whole thing through without worrying about answering those questions, then go back a second time, reread it, and this time, the second time, answer the questions. Because the questions are basically, how does what I just told you in this chapter, how does that relate to your life? So it can be very powerful.
Gives a new insight. Would you say that someone that does that may even be able to have a whole different viewpoint of their circumstances or situation?
Absolutely. In fact, the first chapter is called There's a Way Out. Suicide is usually what I call a permanent solution to a temporary problem. The problem is people who are feeling that way don't think it's temporary. They don't see an end to it,
Right.
and so that they're going to try to end the pain. And so the chapter I meant it, the first chapter on purpose, called "There's a Way Out," is to try to say you might not even see the way out, but there is one there. Other people. That's why you get help with professionals that are guides. In effect, they can guide you through the process of healing. But you have to know that there's a way out of it, even if you can't see it yourself. If someone else can see it for you, they can still get you through that process and get you out. So that message is a big one, to let people know that no matter what's going on, and that's why I do write about my personal story to some extent, because I want them to know, look, I've gone through all this, and actually a lot more
Powerful,
didn't
John.
put it
So powerful.
there. And then I found a way out of it. But it took me 10 years. So I don't want people to have to take that long.
Right. Right. It's so powerful though. It's huge. And you're talking about taking 10 years of your pain and your endeavors and condensing it so folks can say, hey, let me follow this path and get there a lot quickly.
Yes. And I've done really extensive research studies, workshops with lots of other experts, and I've kind of distilled it down. So, because I've read some books, and I'm a pretty smart guy, but sometimes I had to read it 4 times to get what they're saying. And for me, that's most people won't do that. And so I want to make it as simple to understand and to use, so that you're not bogged down with the. And in fact, that's why the book is it's only like, I don't know, 146 pages or something, um, because I had New York publishers wanted me to write a 265-page book for the Get Unstuck Now book, and I said no. I said, if you're
Right.
stuck, you wouldn't read 265 pages. People won't get the
Tough
benefit.
reading it.
Yeah. So I wanted to make it as simple to use as possible, and that's the key. Most people, um, they don't need to understand how an internal combustion engine works. They don't have to turn the key and step on the gas, and that's how it goes. That's all they need. They don't need to understand, the inner workings. So I don't tell you the inner workings. You don't need to know. I just give you the basic driving instruction
Right. Right.
for your life.
Let's cut the fat out.
Yeah.
Yeah. John, thank you. One other thing, I think you had talked about some children's books that are available to help with our young folks. Can you tell us about that, please?
Sure. We've got right now on Amazon, you can get Unstuck, the simple, no, Get Unstuck for Kids, a fun interactive guide to empower your child for life. And that's what it is. It's got the regular content for the Get Unstuck Now book, but it also has a story in each chapter where there are children in the story who are learning the concept of the chapter. So that it's in story form. And so at the end of each chapter, one of the questions, it's meant to be read with an adult, either a teacher or parent, something like that. So that one of the questions is to the adult that says, as the adult, how did you learn this issue? How did you learn? And someone will go, I just learned it now with you. And others will go, when I was your age, here's what happened. And all of a sudden, you get to tell that story, because we never heard those stories of our parents of how they got to be where they are. We just thought they were born with all the knowledge in the world, and we
Right.
found out
Right.
later it wasn't. But this way, it's a bonding experience for the child and the adult, because the child will then have a new understanding, like, oh, you had to learn this too. And it's a powerful thing to, and then, I asked questions for the children to answer, like, what did you learn out of this, and how do you see this for your life, and blah blah. But the idea is, it's empowering. It's giving kids a way to let go of the challenges that we all face. Some are, most of our subconscious programming, which is what runs most of our lives. 80% of it was done by the time you're 8 years old. So
And again, John, please.
80% of your subconscious programming was done by the time you're 8 years old. So that's why subconsciously you can tie your shoe, but you're not thinking, I have to go around this and do that. You do that. So as an adult, you don't think about how you're driving a car. You just drive the car because it's subconscious. It's already doing it.
Can I ask you, John, taking a look at like self-esteem, self-messages, self-talk, how does that fit into that by 8 years old uh, parameter?
There's a new one of my new books that's coming out next year, is CPTSD, which is childhood, also known as complex PTSD, which mostly occurs in childhood. And it doesn't have to be abuse. It can be abuse, could be physical abuse, could be verbal abuse, but it could be poverty. That can be traumatic for people. It could be neglect, that the adult's not really paying attention to you. I mean, there's all different reasons, but the skills that you're learning for this help you to overcome whatever. You get a fight on the playground, all different things that happen during your childhood that we make meanings out of that. So the self-esteem comes from succeeding or failing. And what a lot of kids are not taught is failing is how you can learn. Because if you just accidentally do something right, you haven't learned anything.
Can I
But
break?
sure.
It's not, and this is my opinion. It's not necessarily the winning or losing, but the message that you're taught about winning or losing. Does that sound like
Well,
um,
yeah, people, if an adult says, well, we lost this time, don't worry, we'll do better next time. Or, look, man, you lost. How could you
right?
do
There
that?
you go. There you go. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, and that can have a harmful effect on kids.
Yeah.
And that's why again, in the book, there's processes that the kids can use. First of all, I give them a little bit of understanding, and also that I teach them through the kids in the story learning that lesson so they can understand it from their point of view. Like, oh, that's what it's like. I was bullied on the playground, and then it doesn't have to do with me. And I don't have to feel bad. Blah blah. So it's you're right. Having that message that helps you to understand that if you made a mistake, that doesn't make you a mistake. It means
Right. There you
you
go.
actually had
Okay.
it. It's
Yes.
something
Yes.
that you now
Yes.
learn from, hopefully, um, not to do again or to do differently. And you don't have to feel as like I'm a bad person. No, it's like you just made a mistake, and we all make mistakes.
Right.
So yeah, having that understanding and having some skills to deal with whatever comes up um, allows people, children through adults, to improve their life, because otherwise it gets packed away as baggage, as emotional baggage. And if it's not dealt with, it's going to come out sometime, and it usually doesn't come out in a good way.
Right. Right. John, this is incredible. This is a beautiful spot to start again next week. And I got to ask you if you're available. I know we talked about doing a mini series, but we didn't like nail it down. Would you possibly be available next Saturday to continue with right where we're at, talking about the message surrounding the event?
Sure, absolutely. And maybe we can go through some of the processes so people can actually get something that can change your life just by listening to the show.
Let's do it. Let's do it. John, thank you so very much for coming on the show. I love you, brother. I
I
love.
love it, and I'll be happy to be back next week.
Thank you. And to our greatest family of all time, viewers and listeners, thank you for tuning in and welcoming John Seeley, MA, back into your homes. And I want to remind you, we'll be back again next week at 11 o'clock. We're going to talk about going to 4 o'clock and see what John thinks about that. Because it's going to be 11 o'clock or 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock somewhere. So we're going to figure out a time that just may be a little better. Um, but as always, I want to remind you to please